Clemson Tigers. Had an absolute weekend. What happened? What went into it? Break it all down for us.
Well, they try and set it up like this each cycle, year in and year out. They have their big spring recruiting event, which was the Elite Retreat this past weekend. And then they'll have their huge official visit weekend, which is typically the first weekend that prospects go on campus in the summer. So they try and set it up in this fashion. I can't believe it's already the 2026 class, JD, because it's been since 2021 since Clemson's finished in the top 10 of the On3 industry recruiting rankings. They finished number 5 that year. They shot up to number 7 this weekend after landing 5 commits. They're the top 5 ranked players in the class. It's headlined by Naeem Burrows. He's the number 2 receiver in the country per On3. He's someone that I had Florida in the driver's seat for coming into the visit. He says he knew he was going to Clemson since stepping on their campus for the first time back in June. It's a young man that averaged over 25 yards per catch as a junior, 33 receptions, Josh, 829 yards, 12 touchdowns for powerhouse Jacksonville Bulls. It doesn't get much more efficient than that. 27 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons, 34 touchdowns in his high school career going into his senior year. And the beauty about Clemson this year, when you look at their team, they're the defending ACC championship champs. They obviously made it to the college football playoff, played Texas. You look at their roster this year, why are you excited about Clemson? Well, if you ask me, it's because I think they're finally getting dynamic again at the wide receiver position. When you look at those teams that were competing for championships beyond the ACC, the national championship, what people hold this Clemson program standard to now after Dabo Sweeney has blessed them with 2 crystal balls. They've always had electric wide receivers out there on the perimeter. They got TJ Moore. They got Bryant Wesco. They got Antonio Williams. That standard is coming back. Naeem Burrows definitely fits that. Receiver Connor Salmon also committed to Clemson this weekend. He is one of the fastest wideouts in the country, sub 10.5 guy in the 100-meter dash. They beat Notre Dame, Penn State, Maryland, among others for Connor Salmon. The other thing that you got to like about this Clemson program right now, when Dabo Sweeney hired Matt Luke, that was one of the more pivotal assistant coach hires in the country that year. And Coach Sweeney's lost a lot of great coaches over his time at Clemson, guys that have gone on to be head coaches in other places. Lost my man who went to Arkansas or went to SMU in Arkansas, a high school coach from Texas that kind of got their offense rolling. Who am I talking about, JD?
Chad Morris.
Then you lose Jeff Scott. You lose Tony Elliott. You lose Brent Venables. Those are big losses to any program. But to get Matt Luke, who has proven an offensive line coach as there is in America, a guy who's a former SEC head coach himself, helped Georgia win national titles. That was huge. They're stacking up on the offensive line this cycle. They beat Ohio State and Penn State for Adam Guthrie on Friday. And then on Saturday, they beat Miami and Florida State and Oklahoma, among others, for Grant Weiss. And then the big news Sunday night, another 4-star Chancellor Barclay jumps in the fold. 5 commits for Clemson. The weekend couldn't have gone better. They put themselves in strong position for many more other blue chippers.
So Clemson, like you just mentioned, Steve, phenomenal weekend. They're hot on the trail. Who else are you watching for Clemson that's on their board right now that they potentially could be in the mix for?
Well, they had over 20 top targets on campus. They're also training for some guys that weren't there this weekend. But let's just highlight a few. Let's start with the number 1 linebacker in the country, Tyler Atkinson, Georgia, Ohio State, Auburn, some of the other major contenders. He's going to be back for his official visit to Clemson that last weekend in May. He said it was incredible. He talked about how Dabo Sweeney talked to him and said it was important for him to come there and be the Trevor Lawrence of his defense. He really enjoyed talking to new defensive coordinator Tom Allen about his role in the defense. You are not going to get on a college campus anywhere and get more energy from a defensive coordinator than Tom Allen. I can't even imagine the type of juice that he brought to the Clemson Elite Retreat, but Tyler Atkinson really enjoyed spending time with him. Atkinson expected back at Georgia on Tuesday. They also hosted the number 2 interior offensive lineman in the country, Darius Gray. Now, South Carolina is the program that's trending on the On3 RPM. He likes LSU, Tennessee, Michigan, among others. But he said Clemson is skyrocketing in his recruitment. They have everything that he's looking for. They talk about Clemson's track record of development, playing at the highest level, but also the faith-based program and how that is such a relevant part of the football program. It speaks to a lot of these guys, the Paul journey, all of that. They are a major contender for Darius Gray. The number one player in the state, Zion Giles. He has a commitment date of March 21st. Hayes Fawcett reported that late last week. Clemson's a top school alongside South Carolina, Bama, Florida, Florida State, Georgia, and Tennessee. I think you got South Carolina leading the pack coming into this visit. Zion talking about maybe not even committing now on March 21st. I think Clemson would be the reason why. South Carolina leading coming into the weekend. I also think that Clemson is setting the tone for this number 2 player in the state, safety Kentavian Anderson. He told me that the Tigers are his leader coming out of the weekend. He wants to take more visits. Offensive line and receiver going to remain a major point of emphasis for Clemson moving forward. They had Zayden Krempin on campus, a 4-star from Prosper, Texas. He said Clemson was incredible. They're near the top of the list for 2 more 4-stars, Carter Scruggs and Desmond Green. Cannon Pickett was offered during his visit. There was some talk that Clemson jumped Miami on his list. Now we know Miami's going to work to battle back, so that could be a fluid recruitment moving forward. I like where Clemson stands with Maxwell Riley. He's also from Ohio. He did not visit this weekend. He'll be in Death Valley on March 24th. Receiver will also remain a point of emphasis moving forward. Gordon Sellers from Providence Day, Devin Fitzgerald, Larry Fitzgerald's son, and Ryan Mosley were 3 more receivers that Clemson had on campus that they're definitely on the short list for. Ryan Mosley, like Tyler Atkinson, will be at Georgia on Tuesday. But Clemson setting themselves up for what could be an awesome summer. Javian Mallory is a 4-star running back that they made an impression on that was trending Miami coming into his visit. So it'll be interesting to see who else jumps in the fold for Clemson, but they doubled up their class. They're in the top 10, looking for their first top 10 class since 2021.
And Steve, I want to get your thoughts on this, kind of zooming out a little bit before we move on from Clemson. You mentioned the way that they are attacking the receiver position. Obviously, the success on the field last season, making the playoff and winning the ACC, like you also mentioned. But it feels a little bit like the brand of Clemson is starting to, resurgence is the wrong word, but maybe have a little bit of a revamping, if you will. Is that Dabo Swinney? Is that something they're doing behind the scenes administratively? What is the reasoning? It's still early, but what's the reasoning in your mind behind Clemson now making the push they're making right now and just sort of where the brand's at overall?
Well, they've been one of the top football programs in the country year in and year out. It's just when you win 2 national championships, you expect them to keep it rolling, and that's just not fair. But what they've been able to do is be in the conversation for the ACC title every year. And look, they've lost a lot of staff members. We talked about that at the top of the block, and it's hard to replace some of those great coaches, some of the best in the industry at what they did. But another thing that these recruits pointed to, they got 24 former players that work at Clemson on the staff. So people love that culture, love that program. Obviously, they had some of the best quarterbacks in college football under center when they were making their championship run, elite playmakers. It's hard to just keep bringing in those type of players year in and year out. But Clemson, they're always chasing 10 wins. And this is a season where they're one of the 5 programs that you mentioned coming into the year that says, hey, they got a shot to win the national championship this year with what they have coming back.
No, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Well, Clemson fans, you're on fire on the recruiting trail right now. Get in the comment section, subscribe, all that. Let us know what you think right now about how you're pushing in this 2026 class.